Okay, so to begin this DIY, I'm first going to take my items outside and I'm going to spray them. So the pumpkins, I will be using the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in semi-gloss white. And for the bowls, I will be using the Krylon Craft Series Hammered Finish in silver. So I will give these a couple of coats. Now the bowls, most likely I will just turn them upside down and spray the outside and not the inside. Since it is glass, you will see right through. Okay, so moving on to our willow wreaths, you're going to go ahead and remove the tags. And then all you're going to do is take one of the wreaths, kind of squish it in a little bit, and you're just going to put it through the other willow wreath. So the first small one into the second small one. So just like that. And then the same with your larger willow wreath. You're going to do the same thing. You just take one, just lean it on the inside of the first wreath, then kind of squish down and just push through. Okay, and then here is the larger willow wreath. Okay, so now I just went ahead and cut 4 even lengths of jute twine rope, about 4 to 5 inches. And I'm just going to tie off the top and the bottom. So when I have them in a good place where I like them, I'm just going to tie them with the jute twine. Now I will also be gluing this down. This is just more so to keep it in place. And then, as you will see, I will be adding more jute twine just to add a little bit of an embellishment. So once you've done the top and the bottom, then it's just going to look like this. So tied off at the top and the bottom. Okay, so now for this next step, what I will be doing is wrapping the willow wreaths with the jute twine. Now the first thing I did was I went and I cut off the excess jute twine hanging from the top and the bottom. The bottom I still have to cut it, but I cut the top off. Now here you can see I have my glass bowls that I spray painted. They are now dry. The top I will be wrapping differently than the bottom. The top I will simply just be putting the jute twine and going crisscross so that it has a X finish when I'm done with this. So as an example, I've already done the larger one. So as you can see, it's just like an X. So I just crisscross the jute twine to end up with it looking like this. However, the bottom is a little bit differently because with the smaller one, it sits in really good. The larger one is a little bit more of a balancing act, but the reason for wrapping the jute twine at the bottom is because, as you can see, this willow wreath, since we pushed it inside the other willow wreath, is sitting on top. So there's not an even surface, so that when I go to put the pumpkin on, it's kind of like a teeter-totter, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is on each side, I will separately just wrap some jute twine to build up a little bit of a wall. Once I've done each side, I will then go ahead and make a jute twine braided rope, and then I will just glue that on the top. So I've already done the large one here. So as you can see, this side I wrapped, this side I wrapped, and then my jute twine rope, I just started in the center and then just went in a circular motion until I finished it, and then it covered both sides so that now everything is joined together. This way the pumpkin has a flat surface to sit on. as well, before I went ahead and wrapped the jute twine, you can just go ahead and apply some hot glue to the insides just to make it more secure and keep it in place. So now I've finished my large one for this step. I'm gonna go ahead and work on this one and get it done, and then we will move on to the next step. I have finished wrapping the jute twine, so you can see it is on both sides of this middle willow wreath here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my jute twine braided rope, and if you're not familiar with what that is, it's just 3 even lengths of jute twine. I tie a knot at the top, braid the rope, tie a knot at the bottom, and then cut off the ends. I'm just going to start it off right in front of this X where I first tied the jute twine at the beginning of the DIY when I tied the 2 willow wreaths together. So I'm just going to lay it down beside that there, and then I will just start in a circular fashion. I will keep wrapping around and around until I have reached the desired look that I want. You can do a little bit, or you can completely cover both sides, and that will act as a flatter surface where the pumpkin will sit. So I'm gonna go ahead, glue that down, and then we'll move on to the next step. I finished gluing my jute twine rope down, and it looks really nice. I just like doing this because it gives it a more finished look. If you decide that you don't want to fill the bowl with anything, at least it's more pleasing to see the jute twine. It just adds a little bit more rustic feeling to this look. However, I will be placing some filler inside of the bowl. So even though you won't see it completely, you still may see little pieces here and there. I just really like finishing off my projects so that they have a nice polished look. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to, before we move on to our next step, I'm just going to turn it upside down. And as you can see, there's some gaps here. Now, because I did not glue the jute twine rope as I was wrapping it around the willow wreath, I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue inside of there. This way, wherever this jute twine touches the glue, it's just going to keep it secure and keep it from moving around. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then we will move on to the next step. Okay, so as you can see, the pumpkin is sitting very nicely inside of the willow wreath. But before I glue the pumpkin in, I need to carve the pumpkins out, because if you remember the glass tea light candles that I spray painted, I want these to sit inside the top of the pumpkin. So I'm going to be carving the pumpkin out before I glue it in, because obviously it's much easier to do it on the outside. So to do that, I'm just going to remove the stem from the small pumpkin and the large pumpkin, and I'm just going to take my tea light candle, and then with a pencil I'm just going to trace around the bottom of the tea light candle. Then I will take my utility knife and I will cut that circle out. I will take my hot glue, a little bit of V6000 glue, apply it to the bottom of the tea light holder, and then I will place it inside of the pumpkin so that it's sitting nicely in the pumpkin. Then we will move on to the next step. I placed my tea light candles inside of the pumpkins. They were very easy to carve out. They're both made of styrofoam. This one here is hollow, this one is not, but it was still very simple to scoop out the inside, and both candles went in nicely. And I only ended up using the hot glue. I did not use the E6000 glue because it just seemed to adhere really well. And as well, I'm also going to be taking my jute twine and just wrapping a couple of rows around the glass tea light candle holder, and that as well will keep the pumpkin and the candle holder in place. Point, our pumpkins are ready to be glued inside of the willow wreath. But I just wanted to explain that once you place this willow wreath inside of the bowl, 3 of the sides touch and 1 is a little bit up. Now with the smaller one, it's not as noticeable because it does fit in there much better. But with the larger one, you do notice that there is a little bit more of a gap. So as you can see, if I had to center it, it would be tottering back and forth. So you could either make some more jute twine ropes and wrap them around where the willow wreath touches the bowl, and then it would be more stable. I'm actually liking the fact that they do lean to the side a bit. If you haven't figured it out yet, these willow wreaths are meant to resemble pumpkins. So a lot of times I really like the pumpkins that are lopsided, or you know, the ones that have a little bit more character to them. So I actually don't mind the outer pumpkins leaning to the side. Now once I place my white pumpkins on the inside, I will try to center them so they look like they're sitting a little bit more straight. Now if you decide to do this DIY, you will have to play around with the pumpkins to find where they sit the best, because being that they're not completely flat, they do have bumps on them, then in some cases they sit all right, and then you might just move it a bit and then you find that it's not sitting as good. However, you will be gluing these down, so once you have them glued in place, they are going to stay the way you set them and everything is going to look great. I really like the rustic farmhouse look because it is more forgiving. Everything doesn't have to be just perfect. If it's not, it actually gives more character to the piece. So now I'm going to go ahead and first I will glue down my willow wreaths, and again I will be gluing them a little bit on an angle. So 3 of the sides of the willow wreath here will be touching the bowl, so I will glue that down with some E6000 glue as well as the hot glue. Once those have dried and they are in place, I will then move on to gluing my pumpkins to the inside of the willow wreath. Okay, so gluing these willow wreaths are not the easiest thing, only because they don't sit in the bowl very great. So what I did was I applied E6000 and the hot glue, and it just really wasn't up close enough to the glass bowl. It's not flat, so it just wasn't staying really great. When I took it off, it did leave marks of where the glue was touching the bowl. So what I'm going to do now is, in those spots, I'm going to add some more E6000 glue and some hot glue, and then try placing it in the bowl again, holding it down for a few minutes and seeing if that works better. Okay, so the willow wreath ended up going on much better that way. Now, what I would recommend is once you have it in place and it's fairly firm, I would just go ahead with some more hot glue, and just where the willow wreath and the glass bowl meet, I would just add a little bit more of hot glue. And then after I'm done the DIY, I probably will go ahead and just add a little bit more E6000 glue to make sure that this willow wreath stays attached to the glass bowl. But it's on here pretty good, and you don't have to worry too much about making a mess with the glue. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but as I said, I will be filling the bowl with a filler, so you're not going to see any glue that may drip inside. But if you do have any drips, the best is to just very quickly try to clean it up with a toothpick or a dowel. This way it just looks a lot more nicer on the inside and outside of the bowl. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue finally my pumpkins to the inside of the willow wreath. So as I said earlier, you just want to position your pumpkin where you like how it looks the best. Once you've found that it looks really good in a certain spot, just take your E6000 glue and your hot glue, apply some to the bottom of the pumpkin or to the jute twine, and then put it in place. Allow that to dry, and then we will move on to the next step. Getting close to the finish line. Next, I am going to take these Spounce It and Dab It painting sponges that I purchased from the Dollar Tree. You get 3 in a pack, large, medium, and small. I will be using the large and the small, and I'm just going to take my jute twine and I'm going to cover up that yellow sponge by wrapping the jute twine around it. Now I will keep the wooden handle because I think it just adds a little bit more rustic farmhouse feel to this decor piece. So once I have finished wrapping these, I will glue them to the top of the willow wreath, and we will move on to the last and final step. And glued on my painting sponge, and I think it looks really cute. Now you can notice there are leaves around the painting sponge, but that was not my final step. My final step was actually just adding this Excelsior that the Dollar Tree sells as a filler to the inside of the bowl. But once I placed my painting sponge on top of the pumpkin, it just seemed like something was missing. Had these willow wreaths been the same height, it would have looked more in place, but because I had to place it on the side so that it would balance it out a bit, it just seemed like it wasn't sitting right with me. So by adding these leaves, and these leaves I purchased them at the Dollar Tree, you get 14 pieces in a pack, it just seemed like it tied everything together, and it really gives it more the look of a pumpkin, and also it adds some fall colors to this piece, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. So now I'm just going to add my Excelsior to the inside of the bowl, and then I will show you the two pumpkins together, and I think and I hope that you will really like it. All right everyone, so here is my Dollar Tree Farmhouse Rustic Pumpkin in a Pumpkin Fall Decor piece. And I absolutely love how these have turned out. I'm so thrilled. They are so adorable, And I definitely am glad that I decided to add the leaves to the top of the pumpkin that is to the bottom of the sponges. I really think that it makes it look much more like a pumpkin, and it just blends everything together nicely. As well, it adds some fall colors to give this piece a much cozier look. And again, I'm thrilled with how this has turned out. Now the one on the left, I just added some LED wire copper lights that the Dollar Tree sells, just to show you another way of lighting this up. And it definitely reminds me of the county fair on a fall night. So it's great that every time I look at this piece, I will get that feeling. I guess it's just one of life's simple pleasures. And again, so happy with how it turned out. The one on the right is just plain with the tea light inside, but it is so beautiful, and it really complements the larger one beside it. I think they look great as a pair. It definitely fits the farmhouse rustic feel, and I will so love displaying this in my home. So I hope you enjoyed this DIY. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, guys, take care, and I so hope to catch you in my next video. Bye-bye.